to the Relationship Revivalist Podcast, where I am your host, John, with my amazing and wonderful wife, Jess.
Thanks, John.
I had to do this great intro here just so that, I could start this podcast off on a great bang.
You do it so well, too.
Thank you. So today, we're going to talk about being a united front. And, you might have seen the title, which was United Together in Peace. And so the whole goal of being a united front is to give your household an overtone of peace. Because when you are divided in your thinking and in your decisions, you really there is, just like I said, there's a divide there that could potentially be more of a permanent one that you don't want to be there. And we've seen this many times where a couple will be on one page, and the complete other side of the page is the other person in this couple, and it just seems like they can't seem to flip the page fast enough to be on the same page. And so, Jess, do you have some examples of what we've seen, or perhaps maybe you've got some insight on what we can offer our listeners?
Yes, I do. Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
That was a great intro, though. So we believe that this united front, the whole idea of being a united front together, is one of the most important parts of a great relationship. And why is that? Well, I kind of think of it like us against the world. So when you and your spouse decide to be a united front, picture yourselves locking arms together where there's no room for anyone else in between you. Only God, really. And so that's how it should be in every decision that you make, in everything you do. Don't let, other people get in between you and your spouse. A great example of that is, a lot of parents of married couples think that they might know better, or don't treat my son this way, or don't treat my daughter this way, be good to her. Of course we want to be good to each other, but don't allow those extra voices in between you and your spouse. Don't allow kids to get in the way of you, because they're good at that too. Don't allow anybody who might be trying to manipulate either one of you to get them on their side. And we want to talk about this today because this is one of the number one reasons why we have personally seen divorce happen with couples that we know and friends, and it's
a big, broad spectrum, and it's more prevalent than we even would know, because if you see it in one couple or two or four or 10, you know that there is a mass plethora of other couples are out there who are going through the very same thing, and it's like they don't know that the one way to have peace is to be on the same page. You can't be on page 2, you can't be on the other side of page 1 even. You have to be on the very same page as your spouse. So here's a good piece of advice. If you are not on the same page, don't you dare let anyone in public realize that you are not on the same page. You can be in disagreement with your spouse over a certain topic, but don't let it get outside of your house. Your house is your safety zone, and if you violate that trust or that peace, you have to make amends there. And so talk it out. Make sure that just because you are not on the same page, you're disagreeing with your spouse, and this happens. This is normal. You can definitely talk about it and say, well, I don't agree with you, and here's why. And then give your spouse a chance to respond after you've given your reasons. And believe me, this is the way you talk things out. The Bible says, don't let the sun set on your disagreements, essentially. And this is how you want to talk things out. You want to be able to say to your spouse, I don't agree with you, and here's why.
And then when you're talking to each other, you want to talk and then listen and really listen to what they're saying, not listening to respond, but listening to really listen to their heart and what they mean and what they're saying. And another thing, when you're talking about being in disagreement and then working it out, a huge thing for me when early on in our marriage, when I realized I need to take a step back, I need to ask John what he really means by what he just said, instead of making a snap judgment about what I think he meant by what he said. Every time I would do that, it usually diffused the argument, because I would realize he was really saying the same thing that I was trying to say, just in different words. And instead of listening to respond and thinking, that is not, anywhere near what I believe or what I want to do or whatever, I just simply asked him, what do you mean by that? I gave him a chance to explain what he was saying. I took a step back, relaxed a bit, and realized he was saying the same thing. Then we were able to move forward together in unity, and any fight that might have arisen was diffused right then, because, wait, we're on the same page anyway.
Right. So in other words, if we put us as the example, Jessica's saying one thing, and she tells it to me, and Jessica speak. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, I don't agree with what she just said. This is what I think how it should go. And so I give you John speak. And then we both take a step back and think, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then we get John and Jess speak. And that's when we become a very strong, formidable, united front. Had to get my words there. So,
I like that, John and Jess speak. So you can take that. That is really inspired, John. Yeah, you can take that for your couple who, whoever you are, put your names together, John and Jess speak. So you want to ultimately get to that as clear and as closely as you can, as intimately as you can. Mm-hmm. So put that into your daily routine. What do you mean by that? Relax, take a step back, and really listen to your partner. Yeah. So you probably have more in common than you think. Even if you think you don't have anything in common, go back to the basics. Go back to, why did you even get married in the first place? If you really don't think you have anything in common, you'll probably find some commonalities and then build on that. Mm-hmm. But back to being a united front together. Let's talk some more about that. And how do we, John, let's talk about how we're a united front in our marriage together. Against. Not even against, because, we're not against our family or anything like that. And I think you and I, John, are very blessed for our family that we have on both sides, because we really don't have, a lot of voices trying to come in between us. But one thing that I really appreciate about John, and I think you really appreciate about me, yep, he's nodding yes, is that if there ever was a voice, or sometimes there might be a voice and they're very innocent in it, maybe they're just teasing or whatever, but we stick up for the other person. We don't allow other people to put each other down. We don't, and we don't share things that would show the other person in too intimate of a light. You don't blab about your husband, right. About all the things he did that day that drove you crazy or whatever. You don't do that. You do not do that with your family. You shouldn't be doing that anyway. But we are quick to put our spouse first. And that also shows your spouse that they're number one. Your kids aren't number one to you. Your mother or your father or whoever else is not number one. When you get married, your husband or your wife is number one under God.
Right.
Number one.
Yeah. And it says in the Bible that when you get married, you are to leave and to cleave with your spouse. So that means that if you have any parental, I would say, quote unquote, interference, that is something you need to shut down right away. And you need to let your parents know, hey, I'm now a married man or woman. You know what you are. And I am now entering a life with my partner, my wife, and my wife or husband, whichever part you're playing. And then your parents will know, hey, okay, so they've left the house. They're on their own journey now. And it still makes a whole lot of sense to be their friend, but don't pass over the boundary of having, trying to manipulate. Even if you don't think you're manipulating, think twice about what you say to your children, because maybe you don't think it's manipulation, but they might think so. And just be careful in that manner. And one thing while Jess was talking, I was thinking about people who might have the toughest time in being a united front. And I would say there's 4 different types of personality types. And these personalities, one of them it would be probably pretty easy. And it just so happens there's a lot of game balls in that corner of the pie chart, I guess, for Jess and I. We're both analytical. But the one personality trait that I think would have probably the toughest time, and I'm not saying it's not possible, but the toughest time would be those expressive type personalities, because they tend to bounce around a lot. And I'm not saying this is ADHD either. Perhaps this is it's too much that people would say, oh, this is ADHD, and they just minimalize it to that. It's not. It's just a personality type. You're expressive. You're happy. You're talking a lot. If you talk a lot and you are like the fun of the party, you're probably more likely going to be one of those expressive types. And that means that you're going to have to be more focused on thinking what you say when you're around your spouse. More of the amiable types, which is kind of in between the analytical and or expressive. Amiables like the relationship. They value the relationship over everything. And then, of course, you've got the analyticals, and they think everything through. And the downfall of an analytical is that they think everything through.
Right.
So, and then, of course, you have the driver mentality. These are the people that are going to tell you this is the way it is, and we're going to go do this whether I hurt people's feelings or not. And so this is a quadrant of people that we have as far as personality types. And if you're the expressive or you are the driver, and I would say if you picture like 4 quadrants, driver would be top right, expressive bottom right, amiable bottom left, analytical top left. And so you have mixtures, and in between there, you can go in and out of these boxes and to kind of figure out what you are. And it'd be interesting for you to know what you are, because then you can analyze, you can do more of the examples of how to deal with your spouse. So that being said, know your personality type and work with it, and be sure to get on the same page as your spouse. It's very vital. And I would say if there's anything else that you can add, Jess.
And it would be really helpful to know your spouse's personality type too.
Yes.
And kind of understand how you both relate to each other and how you relate to situations and
Yeah.
And of course we're always working on ourselves and growing, because different personality types might be more prone to relating to situations and people certain ways. It doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's wrong. But we're always trying to grow and present ourselves in a way that is not going to come across as, too sharp or too, unless the situation it's necessary sometimes,
Right.
But, like amiable, like you were talking about, they might also have kind of a hard time with confronting if the relationship is the main thing that they're most worried about, or that they value the most. Because sometimes when you're going to confront maybe a parent or someone that's trying to manipulate in your relationship, you might have to really pray about it and get over that fear of maybe never seeing them again, which that's just a fear. That's probably not fact. They'll probably come around. You'll probably see them again. But if you might have to get through that before you confront. But, don't be afraid of confrontation if it's done in love and, you're not out to hurt each other, of course, but if it's done in love,
Right.
So sometimes that's necessary in being united front. And I really believe that, if the let's say a parent, like maybe the wife's mother is trying to put her voice in between you and your spouse and your husband, it's up to the wife then. If it's her family, it's up to her to put them in their place. Like, you're coming too far over the boundary here. I love you, but you can't say these things to my husband like that, or you can't manipulate us like that. However, whatever you need to say. Same goes for the husband. If it's his family member who's trying to get in between you, it's absolutely up to him to tell them to back off in a loving way.
Right. It kind of boils down to, are you willing to let your parents or whoever it is that's trying to enter into your relationship, are you willing to give them rent-free space in your relationship? And if you are, and you're happy with it, then go ahead and let the seeds of that grow. You want to have peace, don't you? I mean, that's what you're all after. And, one thing that I'd like to say, we are Christian based, and who is peace? Do we all know who peace is? It's Jesus, right?
It's Jesus, the Prince of Peace.
So let's let Jesus just guide you and lead you into the right relationship, mental space that you want to have. It's all about giving yourself peace and living in that peace and being happy and enjoy, because that's where our strength is.
Some people have a hang up about, I can't tell my family or whatever to back off and abide by this boundary. Don't get in between us, because that wouldn't be nice. Look at all that they've done for us, all that they've given to us and all that. But like John was saying, God himself said you have to leave your father and mother. You have to leave your family. It doesn't mean in proximity. It doesn't mean you're not going to be friends. But that, when you're growing up, they're your parents. They're the voices that, say what you can and can't do or should or shouldn't do. That stops when you get married. When you become an adult, that should stop. But when you get married, that should absolutely stop. So you leave your family in that sense and you cleave. That is a very strong picture of like glue. When you're glued together, you can't get apart, right? So you cleave to your spouse. And so hopefully that helps you.
Yeah. And if you're a parent and you think you might be doing some of this, here's some an example of what you should do. And I'm going to wrap this up really fast here because we're getting towards the end of our time here. I would suggest, instead of just being blunt and saying you should be doing this or you should be doing that, tell a story. Tell a story to your kids who are married and say, this is what happened. And for what it's worth, that's the story. And then you can really affect their thinking. They can make their own choices. And that's what I'm saying. You don't want to make them make their own choices. You want to have them make the choices on their own. And that's kind of the advice that I would give for the parents. Thank you for joining us today, and we really encourage you to come over to our website and visit us there at therelationshiprevivalists.com. That is with an S at the very end. And Jessica, do you have anything else to add?
For those in the U.S., we just want to say happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next time.